Hello, and welcome to Barbecue Stories. October 25th forever altered my life due to two major events. On that day, I received test results confirming I had stage 4 cancer, which I had mentally braced myself for. However, what I hadn't anticipated was walking in on my wife Sarah, in bed with another man. My name is Robert, and I was 56 years old when this all happened. Sarah was 47, and we had been married for over 25 years. Until that fateful day, I believed she was a good wife and mother to our children. When Sarah and I first met, she had just graduated from college and started working at the law firm where I was employed. Back then, I was the department manager, and she became my assistant. We spent a lot of time together for work, and those meetings eventually turned into dates. Our dates quickly evolved into living together, which led to marriage and children. Everything happened so naturally that I never even considered the possibility of infidelity. So, you can imagine my state of mind when, after receiving a terminal cancer diagnosis, I also discovered Sarah's affair that same day. At the time, Sarah had no idea about my illness. I hadn't told her because I didn't want her to worry until I had more information. I intended to speak to her in person when I got home. Near the house, I noticed an expensive car parked outside, one belonging to a business partner of mine, which immediately struck me as strange. We lived in a neighborhood prone to burglaries, so we had surveillance cameras all over the property. Oddly enough, the outdoor cameras had been turned off. Using a special app on my phone, I switched them back on and began watching the footage from inside the house. What I saw was Sarah in the arms of my partner. They were passionately kissing on our living room couch, undressing one another. In that instant, all the love I had for her vanished, despite our 25 years of marriage. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, confusion, anger, and a deep sense of betrayal, and I couldn't fathom any reason for her actions. I knew I wasn't to blame. I had always been a faithful and supportive husband. I could have stormed into the house right then, confronted her lover, or even thrown Sarah out and filed for divorce on the spot. But my birthday was coming up in a week, and every year, all of our children and grandchildren gathered to celebrate. I didn't want to miss what could be my last opportunity to spend time with them all together. I wanted to create cherished memories with my family, so I made the decision to handle things differently. I would pretend to be the loving father, grandfather, and devoted husband, only to reveal Sarah's betrayal at the perfect moment. I wanted everyone to know the truth, so they wouldn't make the same mistakes. Until then, I vowed to tell no one. With this plan in mind, I began preparing. I met with my lawyer to review my will and prenuptial agreement. Our prenup was clear: any premarital assets wouldn't count as communal property. When Sarah and I married, we were both financially independent and successful. She had a great salary, good pension prospects, and a sizable inheritance from her parents. From the start, she insisted that we not disclose the full extent of our financial situations to each other. However, it turned out that I had been covering the household expenses, utilities, transportation, groceries, and gas. I supported her completely, while she spent her income on herself, buying cars, clothes, and traveling. On the surface, she seemed generous, but her actions told a different story. A few days after receiving my diagnosis, I decided to resign from my job. When I told Sarah, she seemed a little anxious, which I suspected was because I'd now be home more often, preventing her from continuing her affair so easily. I shared the camera footage with my lawyer and began formulating an exit strategy. No one knew the true extent of my net worth except for my accountant. I'd always led a modest lifestyle, and over time, I had accumulated enough savings for my grandchildren's future. After the divorce, Sarah wouldn't get a penny. My lawyer started preparing the necessary paperwork. I also had contingency plans in place for my worsening health or sudden death. I arranged for in-home care, but Sarah wouldn't be my caregiver. If I became unable to make decisions, my lawyer would inform the children and grandchildren about the inheritance. After quitting my job, I spent the week before my birthday observing Sarah's behavior, trying not to give away the fact that I knew about her affair. She acted completely normal, lots of smiles, laughter, and even compliments. No one would have suspected that this sweet woman led a double life. The only hint that something might be off was how frequently she stepped outside to make phone calls, no doubt to her lover. I patiently waited for my birthday, when I planned to reveal everything to our family. The birthday celebration was set for Saturday, and by Friday evening, our children had started arriving with their families. My eldest daughter, Emma, came first with her husband Jake and their children, Sophia and Noah. Next, my younger son, Michael, arrived with his wife, Claire, and their boys, Liam and Aidan. Soon after, other relatives, nieces, cousins, aunts, and uncles poured in. The house was filled with the joyful noise of children laughing and adults chatting. As always, Sarah played the gracious host, offering food and drinks to everyone. On Saturday morning, the children woke me up with birthday wishes and gifts. Breakfast felt warm and cozy, as we caught up on news and talked about plans. Later, we all went for a walk through the nearby forest. I hadn't felt that alive or happy in a long time. That evening, we enjoyed a festive dinner with cake and champagne. I listened fondly as Emma and Michael gave touching speeches in my honor. It was a magical day, one of the best moments of my life, not only because it might be my last birthday surrounded by family but also because it was the day when the truth about Sarah finally came out. When everyone gathered in the living room with champagne glasses, I stood up and asked for their attention. My dear ones, thank you for this wonderful celebration and for your kind words. You have no idea how much this means to me, especially now, I began. I have some important news to share with you. First, I was recently diagnosed with late-stage cancer. My announcement was met with a heavy silence. The shock and grief were clear on their faces, some barely holding back tears. I briefly explained the doctor's prognosis, sharing that I didn't have long left and wanted to spend whatever time remained with my family. The children and grandchildren asked many questions about treatment, but I declined. I didn't want to waste the time I had left fighting the disease. I wanted to leave them with beautiful memories. And, of course, I intended to reveal the full truth about Sarah. There is something else you all need to be aware of. Over the past few weeks, I discovered that my wife Sarah, your mother, has been unfaithful to me. I have undeniable evidence of her affair with my former business partner, and my lawyer is currently preparing the divorce papers. I felt it was only right to inform you. All eyes immediately turned to Sarah. She sat there, pale and visibly shocked. And that's how I revealed this painful truth to my family. That's not true, she suddenly exclaimed, jumping up. Robert, how could you accuse me like this, and in front of the whole family? I've never had an affair. I've always been faithful to you. She desperately looked around, seeking support. Kids, you know me, I would never betray your father. This is a horrible lie. Mom, calm down, let's just sit and talk, Emma said gently. No, I won't listen to these ridiculous accusations. Sarah was becoming hysterical. Your father must have lost his mind due to the illness, or he's gone mad with jealousy and made this all up. She continued denying her guilt, her voice trembling as tears poured down her face. It was a convincing, but false, display of innocence. I pulled out my phone, ready to show the security footage that would provide the undeniable evidence. With a sense of dread, I pressed play. The video clearly showed Sarah passionately kissing my business partner on our couch. They were obviously aroused, hurriedly removing each other's clothes. A collective gasp filled the room, followed by shock and outrage. Sarah immediately stood up, covering her mouth in embarrassment, her face flushing red. Oh my God, this is awful. I can't watch, Emma sobbed, turning away while her husband Jake comforted their children, who were visibly shaken. Michael silently walked to the window, staring out vacantly. The rest of the family murmured in anger and disbelief. When the video ended, Sarah collapsed into a chair, hiding her face in her hands, her body shaking with sobs. No one dared to break the silence. This was the biggest family drama in our history. I sighed heavily, feeling utterly drained after the revelation. After that exposure, the celebratory mood was utterly destroyed. People started leaving, offering me tense, dry farewells. Their eyes were filled with a mixture of disappointment, bitterness, and pity. Sarah locked herself in the bedroom, refusing to come out or talk to anyone. By the next morning, the The house was empty, everyone had left to return to their homes. I felt emotionally drained, but at the same time, there was a sense of relief. I could now focus on myself. I packed up my things, stocked up on groceries, and headed to my old farmhouse outside the city, a quiet, secluded place surrounded by forests and meadows. I wanted to immerse myself in nature and live life as I pleased. For the first few days, my phone rang constantly. It was Sarah, but I ignored all her calls and pleading messages, asking me to hear her out, to let her explain and beg for forgiveness. I had no interest in hearing her excuses. I simply enjoyed the peace and solitude. After a week alone at the farm, Emma called, urging me to meet with Sarah. Apparently, our mother had become severely depressed, filled with guilt and regret. For the sake of my daughter, I agreed to a brief meeting. The three of us met at a cafe. Sarah looked pale and worn out, clearly not having slept or eaten well in days. The moment she saw me, she started rambling apologies and explanations, but I stopped her with a simple gesture. No need, Sarah. I didn't come here to hear your excuses. Just answer me one thing. Why? What did I do wrong in all our years together that made you betray me? Lowering her gaze, Sarah quietly confessed that her lover had promised her a luxurious life abroad, expensive clothes, yachts, and everything she had ever dreamed of. She had been enchanted by his charm and lavish gifts but never intended to leave the family. She simply wanted to feel young and desired again, though she hadn't planned to abandon us for a brief affair. After offering this weak explanation, Sarah broke down, sobbing and begging for forgiveness, even suggesting couples therapy if I wanted. But her words were filled with self-interest, and her remorse seemed to come from the fear of being left with nothing rather than genuine regret for her betrayal. I shook my head firmly. I want a divorce, Sarah, I stated. To my surprise, instead of showing repentance, a flash of anger appeared in her eyes. You're the selfish one, Robert, she retorted. Instead of fighting for my attention, you decided to publicly humiliate me in front of the entire family. And for what? A meaningless fling that meant absolutely nothing. I was stunned by her audacity. A meaningless fling? That lover of yours promised you a life of luxury abroad, I responded. So what? Sarah snapped. Those were just fantasies. You know how much I love to daydream. In reality, I wouldn't have left you. But no, you just had to stage this humiliating spectacle. Realizing further conversation was futile, I waved my hand in disappointment and walked out of the cafe, leaving Sarah shouting angrily after me. After that disastrous meeting, I returned to the peaceful sanctuary of the farm, where I could enjoy the quiet life I desired. I spent my time tidying the house and land, walking through the forest, reading books, admiring nature, and feeling no regrets. My children and grandchildren visited regularly, bringing groceries and medications, and helping out around the house. We talked, walked the surrounding area, and played board games in the evenings. These visits brought me immense joy and serenity. Meanwhile, my lawyer handled the divorce paperwork and the transfer of my entire inheritance to the children and grandchildren. By law, Sarah wasn't entitled to anything post-divorce. Soon, the marriage was officially dissolved, and I felt a tremendous sense of relief, free from the burden of betrayal. As for Sarah, she disappeared from town after the divorce. Her reputation plummeted as word of her infidelity spread. People began asking her to step down from leadership roles, and even her friends distanced themselves, some openly questioning if she had also tried to seduce their husbands. She made several attempts to reach out to me, but I didn't respond. I simply asked that she be told I had said all I needed to say, and that I knew all I needed to know. I no longer cared. I just wanted to live out my final days in peace. Dear listener, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and consider subscribing to the channel for more content.